Oh, sorry. I was just talking to my friends on my computer-mediated device. But that's actually okay because that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I chose to do my research paper on social information processing theory by Joseph B. Walther. The social information processing theory is something that I believe we can all relate to as a society, especially the younger generation. It's a theory that is being used in everyday life. We're always on our phones. We're constantly on our iPads, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything. And we're talking to people all over the world, and some of the people we don't even know. During the 80s and 90s, people did not feel the way we do about social media now. I know that if you ask my parents or somebody from another generation, they'd say they wish we could go back to how things used to be before that we had all these smartphones and when things were a lot more simple. We're going to be talking about the difference between computer-mediated communication, also known as CMC, and face-to-face communication. Computer-mediated communication really helped change communication into what it is today. My research on social information processing theory shows that there are many different steps to communication, and it allows us to see the difference between this theory and others that do not agree with social information processing theory. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the difference between computer-mediated communication and face-to-face communication. Computer-mediated communication is also known as CMC. It really helped change communication into what it is today. My research on social information processing theory shows us different ways of communication. It allows us to see the difference between social information processing theory and other theories that do not agree with Walther and his theory. We'll be talking about where this theory comes from and how it exists, and we'll be comparing this theory to others. Not only do we need to know where this theory came from, but we need to know why and where. A lot of people today, young people, I have friends that don't give a rip about any history of the stuff they're using. They'll sit on Facebook for 7 hours a day, and they don't know, how it even came about. They don't know the history between the technology, and they don't realize the difference in it now than it was, 20 or 30 years ago. The first theory we're going to be comparing to Joseph B. Walter's theory is the social presence theory. This theory explains how a conversation on a computer-mediated device might feel lonely. It might feel as if you're not even talking to anybody but yourself. If I'm sitting here emailing somebody long distance or having to carry on conversations with people through the computer, and I can't see them face to face, then I might feel as if it's just a waste of time and it's pointless. The scholars that wrote this theory, they don't believe that relationships can be built like this. Well, I disagree. I agree with Joseph B. Walther. I might be a little biased because, again, I live in a generation where I've grown up with all the technology and capabilities of communicating online. And just a quick story to back that up. I met my wife at a church camp. I met her, didn't know anything but her first name and where she was from, and like any old dude would do, I Facebooked her and figured out who she was and messaged her. And over a year and a half's time, we kept in touch long distance and ended up getting together and dating, and then we ended up getting married. So I have a little different opinion about computer-mediated communication because obviously it worked out for me. But I do understand where the scholars come from when they say, it might feel lonely or pointless because they lived in a time where they didn't have the technology that we do today. The second theory that is against Walther's theory is media richness theory. This theory says that you cannot have a deep enough connection with a person over CMC. It claims that with face-to-face communication, you can have more facial expressions and verbal cues. You can see hand gestures and body language. Once again, these scholars that wrote this didn't grow up, having the technology that we have. I know I'm repeating myself, but it goes along with each, argument. Um, Now, just like when I was keeping in touch with my wife, uh, we could, if we wanted to see each other's facial expressions, we could just get on FaceTime or Skype. My wife went when we were still dating. She went to Haiti on a mission trip, and we were able to FaceTime when she was in another country. So this theory, I don't think it really applies now. It's their argument is to me is kind of outdated. Not to mention that actually in our textbook it says that the average teenager sends 3,039 text messages a month. It don't sound like to me people are having trouble staying connected. Obviously, they're satisfied without using nonverbal cues. The third theory we're going to talk about is the lack of context clues. This theory states that people seem to get self-absorbed. It says that they're not clear what they're saying over CMC. It claims that people use language that is hurtful or that they're not ashamed to use, and they're not scared to say something negative towards a person because they don't have to be confronted face to face. This may be true at times, but I believe that these scholars must forget how people communicated before there was any technology whatsoever. These scholars say that people may have hurtful messages back and forth because they hide behind computer screens, or they may not be able to stay connected. But before there was any technology, what did people do to communicate? They wrote letters back and forth when they wasn't together. People would go off to war or go off to school, at college, and the only way to stay connected was to write a letter, put it on a horse and buggy, and maybe you'll get a response in a week or two. So, I think Walther's theory makes perfect sense. Most people can express themselves over the phone and computers better than writing letters. Over a period of time, I think people become closer and stronger using computer-mediated communication because that's the way people are used to talking nowadays, and it makes sense to this generation. And so today, especially, I think I can say that I believe that these three theories do not prove Walther's social information processing theory wrong. Back then, like I've said, they may have had a little more of an argument, but I think today their arguments are kind of outdated. There are still people that may agree with those old scholars, but for the most part, I think this generation in society likes to be able to communicate with computers. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to do is touch on the project that I would do if I was going to extend my research a little bit. I think that if I was going to carry on with this paper, I would do just as much. If not, I would try to do more research than I've already done. I would probably say that the project that I would enjoy doing would be to take this to a college campus or somewhere where there's a bunch of people and walk around a public place and just take a survey and ask people how their relationships go over computer mediated communication. I would, after I do my survey, I would still write my paper like I've done. I would then either put together a video or PowerPoint, if not both, and I'd put all the facts in there I can, all the arguments in there I can, and then I would like to have like a class setting or something where you might can debate with someone that uses a theory against yours. I think that'd be a good way to get people involved that normally wouldn't be interested, but they like to be involved in competition. I know I like to be involved in competition, and it helps me in the classroom or anything I'm studying. If somebody don't have the same opinion as I do, then we can duke it out over theories. And so I think that if you have people asking questions and kind of have a debate type setting, I think that'd be a good way to learn the information you're studying and to just know the history of things and be able to present that in a way that would make sense to others. All right, so that is my theory that I chose to do. Joseph B. Walther's social information processing theory, and thanks for watching.